Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, 13 years and still counting. Well, the recession has hit hard, and boy, it has hit Pennsylvania cities very hard. The condition of Pennsylvania cities. We're also going to take a look at one city in particular, the capital city, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. All that and more. Guess what? Pennsylvania politics in depth, and oh, I forgot the government part, in depth and in detail, and it all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, this is one of the more important programs we're going to do. Pennsylvania cities, they're vital to the economy of the state. They employ, a lot of people live in them, and they employ a lot of people. Sitting across from me is Jack Garner, John Garner, Jack to me. He's the executive director of the Pennsylvania League of Cities and Municipalities. And then following that, we're going to get into the Harrisburg situation. Mr. Garner, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Terry.
All right, let's talk. Look, the recession has hit all Pennsylvanians pretty hard. This is not, it's been around a while, and it's not getting over soon. How would you generally describe the situation in our cities?
Well, I think it's now become a crisis. Over the last several years, we've had cities with difficulty in adopting their budgets. They write their budgets on a calendar year. There have been increases in property taxes over the last several years to balance the budget and provide services. But last year, what we found is that we had cities really up against the wall. Huge increases in property taxes, cuts in services, cuts in non-vital services like recreation, parks, and some other services that you wouldn't think are vital to the community. It is to the spirit of the community.
They're not there, right? Then they're vital all of a sudden.
Right. All of a sudden, the citizens don't have the option.
Yeah.
But our cities are up against the wall. Property taxes can't carry the day in this economy, and we're losing the collections estimated from other taxes, such as the wage tax, because of the downturn in the economy.
Yeah.
So
in other words, as people get laid off, and then the taxes that some of the taxes you would normally get, you wouldn't get. And
right.
Well, before we go on, and I want to talk about the prescriptions.
Right.
Look, we're all about problem solving, and I know your organization is all about problem solving. But But I read, and you're the expert on this. I read now where there's debates about fire cuts in fire companies and police forces. I mean, now they're not just okay. These are pretty important services. Are we finding more and more, and do you expect more and more of that?
I think this budget year is going to be extremely difficult, and I would not be surprised to see cities across the state having to cut public safety personnel. There's no place else to go. Decreased revenue, increased costs for services. There's nowhere to go, so you have to cut on the expenditure side as much as you can. Yep. And that affects the delivery of services.
Yep. Well, maybe maybe the only good side, if it is a good sign, is crime seems to be down, at least. So it's not as though, boy, imagine if we had the situation with crime we had a few years ago, and we're having these massive what could be cuts in the police and particularly fire service. All right, well, let's talk about some of the remedies. I mean, look, it seems to me that Pennsylvania cities are in a straitjacket. The state tells you what you can and you can't do, and you don't have a lot of flexibility in what you can do. So let's go over, if you were in a perfect Jack Garner world, yes, you could go to the legislature and say, okay, here's what I want. Give me 2 or 3 of the things that you think the state legislature ought to be doing to help cities function more effectively.
Well, first, we need a new tax base, a regional tax base, such as an optional county sales tax, which would redistribute the revenue collected countywide to municipalities, including cities, within the county, and allow a reduction in the reliance on property taxes, but provide a broader-based, elastic new source of revenue that we don't have right now.
Yeah, so you have too much. Your argument would be, and boy, this has been supported by studies over the years,
right,
that cities and school districts are far too reliant on property tax, and now property tax values are falling because of the recession, right, and the mortgage crisis.
Yes.
So your argument would be you got to end that reliance. Is that it?
We have to do a flip. We have to put sales tax collections and redistribution as the predominant source of revenue, reduce the reliance on property tax. It still needs to be a part of it. And by doing that, then we have a fairer tax system and the ability to better provide those services. Absolutely, that is the way we need to go.
Yeah, one of the other, we have about a minute left in this segment, but one of the, there's a couple of taxes, and I want to get to some other stuff like a county local option drink tax. You know, we have this thing called Tax Anything Act. I guess it's what, Act 511, where you got all these taxes. Would you like to push them all aside and just have one big stable tax? I mean, does it all come down to that?
Well, I think that those other tax options just are not good resources for the revenue we need to really move into the 21st century, and so the answer to that is yes.
All right, we're talking with Jack Garner from the Pennsylvania League of Cities, the plight of cities. I want to talk about what they're trying to do in terms of reversing what they think are these almost intolerable situation that cities face. I also want to ask him about pension reform. It's a big issue at the state level. We'll see what it is at the municipal level. All of that and more following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, the cities of the state of Pennsylvania are our focus with Jack Garner. He's the executive director of the Pennsylvania League of Cities and Municipalities. You know, in addition, there are a couple of the other aspects of what you have to deal with are, you know, the pension reform question as well as collective bargaining. Pensions, huge issue in the state, you know, where we've got these two big systems, and I have to fess up that I'm in one of them as a former professor at a public university. What's the situation with the cities and pensions?
Well, we share that plight, especially in cities with unfunded pension debt, and the struggle that the cities have, especially in these economic times, to continue to pay into the pension plans as employees retire and new employees are hired. And it's one we need to grapple with, and it's as big an issue, I think, locally for cities as it is at the state level. And we'd like to partner with the state in addressing that problem this coming session. We need to modernize the pension plan in Pennsylvania and look to options such as defined contribution plans, which don't drain the treasury of the city.
And so your point would be that you have to live with whatever the rules are that the state imposes on cities. You don't have flexibility, right? And we have
that is correct.
Some number like 3,000 municipal pensions, and some of them have 10 or fewer people in. Do I got that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct, and it's
How can
almost.
you have a pension system with 10 people in it?
Truly, when I travel across the country in other states, it's almost an embarrassment to admit to that fact, but it is true. Yes.
Can't we put them all in one and get some economy of scale there? I don't know.
I would hope that's the discussion we can have in the General Assembly next year. That it really needs addressed and needs to be accomplished.
All right. Well, before I let you go, you've formed you call it Core Communities in a Crisis Task Force. Yes. What's that about?
Well, in March, we brought our mayors to Harrisburg for a lobby day, a press conference on the issues that the municipalities are facing across the state. Coming from that press conference and some discussion with legislators, our officers and our board felt that we needed to bring some attention to the problem. And they didn't feel that there was a significant amount of attention being brought to the problem in our cities. So they have formed this task force. We have 29 mayors and council members across the state meeting, 3 meetings this fall, Pittsburgh State College and ending in Reading, to come up with a game plan. We want to look at problems, solutions, and recommendations. We want to get outside the box and look for innovative solutions to their problems. and take it to the new governor.
I was just going to get to that point. You're going to have to deal with it. You know, nothing's going to happen between now and January in this state. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But now's the time to grapple with this issue and come up with some recommendations.
All right, we'll let you go. You have to come back when you get this thing. I'm always interested in how everybody's going to relate to the new governor. You got to come back and tell us what success you're having.
Look forward to coming back and talking about that.
All right, Harrisburg City, talking about cities that has its problems. We have some folks who have some ideas about what to do about helping the city of Harrisburg out. We'll be back with more of Pennsylvania Newsmakers following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, we're going to zero in. We're going to focus on the city of Harrisburg, and we got two gentlemen here who know all about this city, and they're going to give us some recommendations on solving the city's problems. Joseph Robinson Jr. is sitting across from me, the executive director of the Martin Luther King Jr. Leadership Development Institute, and David Black, he's the president and CEO of the Harrisburg Regional Chamber. I am out of breath getting those new titles. All right, you two guys, your two organizations have this thing you're calling what? Blueprint for Prosperity? Do I got that close enough?
You have that correct.
What is that about?
All right. Blueprint for Prosperity is an initiative that comes out of the Martin Luther King Leadership Development Institute, whereby we are endeavoring to build a coalition, if you will, a community development process.
Okay.
And we've endeavored to host several forums over the last year.
And what are you doing in those forums?
Well, what we're doing is bringing awareness to these critical issues, as well as connecting the community with resources, regional and national. And so for this particular issue related to the economic issues in our community, we partnered with
Harrisburg City. We're talking about
Harrisburg primarily, correct.
Right.
But it certainly has impact, far-reaching.
Yeah,
beyond
who
Harrisburg.
knows? Maybe it goes beyond
Absolutely.
that at some point.
And so for this particular forum, we said let's partner with the chamber to bring some awareness to this issue.
And why are you guys in this?
Well, obviously, the debt crisis is having a significant impact on the image of the city and the region. You know, by contrast, we had some good rankings on Forbes, the fifth most livable city or region in the country, and that's by MSA, which includes Cumberland, Dauphin, and Perry County. But we get painted with a bad brush, and so we needed to get some discussion started because we didn't see a lot of action, and it was important that the business community and Joe's organization come together. That this isn't just a business issue, or it's not just a community issue. It's a regional issue.
So you're all in it together.
Absolutely.
Your basic point, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, let's look. Which one of you wants to help me the cities? We had Jack Garner in there. He knows a lot about this. Let's just go through Harrisburg as sort of representative, even though with this incinerator debt, and I don't know how deeply I want to get into that. Harrisburg City faces enormous challenges, maybe as much as any in the state. Is that unfair?
No, that's fair. That's accurate.
Fair. Okay. What are the specific? Go through the problems. Let's start with you. Give me a couple of them, and then you'll give me a couple of them.
Well, obviously, like all cities, Harrisburg is facing budgetary shortfalls like everyone else. Revenues, housing, with the housing prices that they are, there's shortage of revenue. I mean, Harrisburg's tax base is small in terms of Harrisburg proper, and so you've got revenues falling, then that decreases your tax base.
So you got the fiscal problem, but you also have this debt that some 200 and who knows 80 million, 60 million because of this incinerator situation. First of all, what's that all about?
That was about retrofitting an incinerator, the failed attempt of a company that went out of business, and so they had to float additional debt to get it done and get it working. The good news is it's working. The bad news is it left $288 million of debt on an asset that's not worth that. It's like having a mortgage that's probably worth that's twice the amount of what your house is worth.
So Harrisburg is on the hook for this debt,
Right.
which it has to
Right.
pay.
The authority floated the debt, but the city is the guarantor of the debt, and Dauphin County has a little bit of the guarantee on that as well.
Okay, and they're squabbling, and we understand
Right.
that squabble, and we don't care about that squabble
That's
here.
right.
We can,
That's right.
somebody else can handle that. But the point is, it's created this big debt. Now,
Right.
one of the issues that I've read about as I've followed this story, transition from Mayor Reed to Mayor Thompson, has to do with trying to get investments in, the center city, Harrisburg, very thriving. You got that Second Street stuff. You go to Harrisburg, you go down Second Street, man, you got restaurants, you got lot. But it's always about the neighborhoods. It's always about the neighborhoods. Am I right? I mean, the neighborhoods need help, and there's no money to. What?
Right.
Is there anything in your blueprint in which you talk about how to revitalize neighborhoods?
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, we've not focused on that specifically.
Okay.
However, what we intend to do is with our ongoing forum that will follow this, we are assembling the kinds of people who will give some input into that very issue. Because what we're trying to do is build a, if I can use the term, Dr. King talks about his beloved community.
Yeah.
We're trying to build that, and the way to do that is to make sure that everybody gets at the table and everybody has an opportunity. So yes, there has been some growth in the city over the years, but it has not spilled over to the inner community.
Well, if I could just add on that, cities, when they come back, typically they start in center city, in the downtown.
And that's where the
Philadelphia.
mayors and they've all focused on.
And
It's the easiest part of the
And
problem.
you have to build the tax base, and the easiest way to build a tax base is with big buildings that pay a lot of taxes.
I want to come back to that point in a minute and talk about the B word, bankruptcy. Let's see where all that goes. All right, we'll be back. We're going to pay some bills talking about debts. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking about cities in this program itself, but this segment or two about Harrisburg in particular with Joe Robinson and Dave Black. Look, let's talk a little bit about this business of where the focus should be. I always argue, now I know it's tough to get cities revitalized downtown, Dave. It's tough. But I think it's tougher in the neighborhoods because, look, you're a business guy. It's tough. You want to make money. You want to put a business there. How do you make money? Go ahead, take it.
Well, the strategy that has started, and it's a slow strategy, and it's frustrating for people in the neighborhoods, but it is building on the corridors. If you look in Harrisburg, the Midtown's starting to come back. It's not there yet, but with the investment of Hack and some private developers and some
Harrisburg Community College.
yeah,
That's all right.
and Uptown, and looking into Allison Hill, it also has to be along the corridors, Market Street and Dairy Street, and the Community Action Agency and others are working up there, and there's some groundwork that's laid, but it's a very slow process, and I think that's part of what happened. There was a lot of frustration, and that led to the ouster of Mayor Reed and the new administration coming in.
Right.
Yeah, and the courthouse, being relocated here in Harrisburg, that's going to help develop that corridor as well. But those are the kinds of things that Dave suggests,
But
spur
you
growth.
would generally agree with me that,
no question.
Sure.
I mean, even though I'm sure you talk to mayors and I'd say it's the easier part, they'll roll their eyes and say it wasn't easy, but we're talking in relative terms, right?
That's right.
And plus the other thing is the employment that downtown, theoretically offers to folks who live in the communities, the jobs, right, and the tax base. Yes, no?
Sure.
Yes,
okay.
and the other thing in our region, particularly, it's transit. Harrisburg's a pretty small city, but it's even getting city residents out to places where they need to work, and that's where the transit system comes in as well.
That's a great point. All right, I want to look. One of the words that have been thrown around is the B word for the city, bankruptcy. Governor Rendell has said, no, don't do it. And I noticed that one of his former press aide is now going to work for Mayor Thompson. Chuck Ardo, to help explain the city's situation to not just, remember, people are interested not just in Harrisburg, but all around the state, for lots of
nationally.
nationally.
This is a national
So
issue.
what's the B word? I mean, what?
Well, Well, yeah, you talk about bankruptcy. I mean, there are, as you know, there are many options many things have to occur before you get to bankruptcy, and so certainly we don't want to fear it, but it's not something we want to rush to as well. Yeah. And so there are some other things that have to occur before we move down that path, and so we're certainly. I know the mayor is undertaking some steps to work with her financial team to try and identify some approaches to stave off that as an option. But it is ultimately an option. But then now you're talking about a scorched earth, and you're starting from ground up. So you don't want to go there if you can avoid it.
You agree? You don't want to go there if you don't.
No, we don't want to go there. And the ripple effect through the financial markets. There was a time when municipal bonds were a safe investment. Everybody was comfortable. But if cities,
to see if I own any. I have to go check now. You guys brought this up.
That is a concern, and it's not just Harrisburg, but Harrisburg is kind of on the front line. Everybody's watching to see what happens in Harrisburg.
Yeah. Well, look, on a scale, sort of the optimism, pessimism scale, and you guys understand the city's problems as well as anybody. How optimistic are you? I mean, I asked Jack that. I mean, well, how optimistic are you that Harrisburg will get through this?
Well, I'll tell you, as was stated at our forum that we held back in July, all the panelists, all the presenters said the same thing. It's all going to be contingent upon how cooperatively all the government officials will be. So it will be a long process. It can be a challenging process regardless. But it depends on how well they work together.
All right, I'm going to ask you a tough question. So, there has been some contention, with the new mayor. Let's be honest. We don't have to get into the details of. Sure. Are you trying to bridge all that and say, okay, in a bigger way, this is bigger than any one person, bigger than any one institution? Go ahead.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it's about. And we had Bernard Anderson up from Philadelphia, and he talked about the Ed Rendell experience when Governor Rendell was mayor, and he had a similar crisis. It was a matter of getting council and the mayor to work together, and that's what.
And the unions. That's not. The unions. Few trouble.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. There were some clear challenges, but the fundamental point is getting a plan together and then getting the parties that have been elected to make the decisions, make decisions. And so far, there's some behind-the-scenes work on a plan, but there hasn't been anything that's been vetted, and the clock is running.
We're out of time, but we're out of time. But look, will you guys get down the road here and give us a call? Come back and you can explain. We want to know we want all the cities to be healthy. All right, thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I almost got that out. Newsmakers. And as always, stay well out there. And guess what? We'll see you next week.